Hi, dear friends. Welcome to our live. Write me, do you hear me well? Is everything working fine? Today we are walking through St. Petersburg, and this is the panoramic photo of the city. Maybe you've seen our previous translations around Moscow, so we decided to change the atmosphere a little bit and move to the northern capital. We are starting today with the discussion of the city in general and how is it different from Moscow. Basically, it was a capital for 300 years, and our discussion today is what's left from these times of the empire and what actually the establisher wanted it to be like. As you know, probably, the St. Petersburg was established by Peter the Great when he won this area from Sweden. And you can see the first thing that actually. First of all, if you look at the city, it has lots and lots of rivers and canals. And that's how Peter wanted it to be. He wanted the city to look like Amsterdam. If we look at the plan that he created, actually you can see that Petersburg has three main parts. It's the Vasilievsky Island, it's Petrogradskaya part, and the center. So Peter wanted it to copy Amsterdam, and if you look at these gray channels here, basically this is all water. It was supposed to be water. But something went wrong, and that something is the climate. They tried to dig it, it was too cold, then the water was very bad and the boats couldn't be there, they were stuck all the time. So the idea of making it the second Amsterdam or the second Venice actually was gone. But still, Petersburg has, imagine, 800 bridges and lots and lots of rivers, canals where tourists go on the boat tours. So it's based on the water, based on the swamp. And you can see how Petersburg was built. This is swampy area near the north. People didn't want to go here. Mainly the first structures were made of wood. Later, Peter the Great wanted people to come to his city. It was cold and unpopular to move there, so he managed to attract people, actually forced them to move, by applying one law. He said that nowhere else except Petersburg you can build stone structures. So it meant that all the craftsmen, all of the stone workers, they had to move to St. Petersburg. And all of the people, the nobility who didn't support him, he said, "You're my enemies." So the decision was made, and basically people had to move. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so this is how the city was basically built. Now we go forward to our map. And we are discussing briefly where we are going today. So this is the Palace Square, that's where we'll begin. And slightly we will move through the canals, through the little yards, and go to the Nevsky Prospect, the main avenue. Alright, now let's go down to see the Palace Square. We are standing in front of the Hermitage Museum, which is the Winter Palace, and near the Alexander Column. Let's come closer to Hermitage, because we are going to talk about it for a while. You can see that now it has this beautiful turquoise blue color. It was not always like that. And when it was only built as a winter palace for Peter, it was much smaller. This structure is from his daughter, Elizabeth, who really enjoyed the scale. She really enjoyed the beauty of the empire, so she wanted it to be grandiose. That's her structure. If we look closer, you see Hermitage has three more buildings. So basically, this winter palace, it's where the art collection is. Then we have also the small building here. It's the Hermitage Theatre, where Catherine the Great was setting her plays. And then you have the small Hermitage and the big Hermitage building. So all of this now is the home to the second largest museum in the world, Hermitage Museum, which is basically around 3 million art pieces. Crazy numbers. There is a calculation that if you stand in front of one painting for only 1 minute, you will spend 6 years to see the entire collection of the Hermitage Museum. These are great numbers, actually. And also, Hermitage is talking about the color. Now it's turquoise, but originally it was yellow color. I will show you how it looked at the photos right here. So first it was yellow, then it was red. All of the emperors wanted to paint it the color they liked more. So the one that you can see here, it's from the Nicholas. Then Nicholas II painted it even darker. During the World War II, the idea was to paint it gray so the enemies won't see basically the building. It won't be obvious for them where to fire the bombs or the guns. So that was how it looked during World War II. All the collection was evacuated, all the city was masked, so the enemies, when they are flying, they don't actually see where the main attractions are and where the main capitals buildings are located. Also, Hermitage is famous for the cats. Maybe you've heard about this, maybe not, but Hermitage is the home to hundreds of cats, and they are officially employed in the museum. They serve as the guards, and they have even the keeper of the cats, who is also the official person employed by Hermitage. They were brought here originally by Peter the Great because Petersburg suffered from mice, and Peter said, right, we need someone who will help us to fight with them, and cat was brought by him from Amsterdam, where he was taking all of the innovation. That's how cat started to be the initial part of St. Petersburg. And one more thing, which is very interesting about Petersburg, is the chimneys. Because if you look at the Hermitage building, you can see this strange statues here. If you compare it, for example, to the building which is located here. Let's do this from the panorama. Here you can see all of the buildings. They are covered with the chimneys here and all around. This is because all of the city center of St. Petersburg is super old. The entire city is in UNESCO, the city center. So the buildings date back to the 18th, 19th centuries, beginning of the 20th century. That's why they still have the original heating equipment. Basically, this is not used anymore. We have central heating, but some of the fireplaces, they still work. People still can operate them. And in Hermitage, in the Winter Palace, they wanted to hide them. Because imagine, this is a beautiful palace. If you see the smoke coming off the chimneys, that won't be logical, that it's the royal residency after all. That's why they basically have this beautiful statues on top, which are hiding all of the right here, just to make it, invisible, almost invisible. You can see this beautiful gate here as well, where all of the tourist group is. We'll come closer to it. This may be famous to you. We are in the inner yard. Let's have a look at it from the other side. We'll just have to move a little bit. Yes, right here. You can see the crown, the sign of the monarchs, and the double-headed eagle that you already seen in the Kremlin. This is famous by the movie of Eisenstein, where they take over the Hermitage, because this was where the royal family lived. If the communists managed to take it, that meant that they take the power. And that's where the main scene of the Hermitage conquering is happening. You can see it in my slides. We'll do like that. The Hermitage cats. And that's the takeover of the Hermitage. You can see the crowds running towards it, and the Winter Palace soon will become the main headquarters of the communists before they move to Moscow. Now let's have a look at the column that stands in the middle of the square. We are going back to the square. Yes, we are here. And this is the famous Alexander's column. Basically, it was built by his brother, Nicholas, and it was commemorating the victory over Napoleon. For these hard years that Napoleon came and conquered Moscow, actually Alexander managed to move him all the way back to Paris and to conquer Paris. And it's actually the tallest freestanding column in the world. It's around 46.5 meters, and it's the solid piece of granite, which is unbelievable. The weight of it is 600 tons. And imagine, it didn't fall even during the bombing. So basically, it stands so well and is such a great engineering construction that it managed to stand even when the bombing were happening and the earth was shaking. The interesting thing about it, like a legend, is that the main tour guides are telling in St. Petersburg that this statue has the face of Alexander I. Actually, if you come closer to it, fly on the helicopter or the drone, no, it's not Alexander. Obviously, it's a lady, and nobody knows who she is. There is another legend that this is the young poetess who lived in St. Petersburg at that time, and then the architect and the sculptor decided to depict her when she died. She wrote around 1,000 poems, but now she's quite unknown. And yeah, so that's about the column, about the square. We will come back to the square to see this building, which is right in front of the main Hermitage building, the Winter Palace. This is called the General Staff Building. Now it also belongs to Hermitage and hosts the collection of the artists of the 20th century. Like it has Picasso, it has all of the Impressionists, Matisse, and originally it belonged to the military headquarters. One more thing that I wanted to tell you about St. Petersburg, we will come back to the footage of the drone right here. We will talk about the bridges, because as I told you, St. Petersburg has now 800 bridges, but originally it was not the case. Yeah, we'll look from the helicopter view. You see, this is called the Dvortsovy Bridge, which means the palace bridge, and actually all of them appeared much later than Peter the Great's time. So the first floating bridges appeared only in his daughter's time of Elizabeth. Peter didn't want the bridges to exist. Basically, historians tell that there were 3 reasons for that. I will describe them to you. The first one is basically for the boats, because Peter wanted everybody to use the boats, and the foreign boats were coming constantly into the port because the city was supposed to be the city for trade. So his idea was that it's the constant trade happening, the constant flotation, and the bridges will just block them from coming. Then actually another reason was the floods that happened constantly. There is no sense in making the bridge if the water will just move it away. So you spend time, you spend money, and it's also dangerous for the people who will be crossing it. Also no. And the third reason is that he was forcing this way people to use the boats. So to cross from, for example, fortress where Peter spent a lot of time, to his palace, which was there in the summer garden, he used the boat. It was easy to construct the wooden bridge and then just to fold it and unfold it, but he was not doing this. This type of the bridges, I will show you one that appeared during the time of Elizabeth. They looked like this. You can see this is winter, and the people were moving through the bridge sometimes, but sometimes they were just crossing it through the ice, which was quite fine. And if you look carefully, it's floating. You can see the little wooden constructions that are helping bridge to stand. This one doesn't exist anymore. And basically, I've read that it was paid. So in order to cross it, you had to pay the tax, which is equal nowadays to $1 for the pedestrians. But we don't know exactly how much it was for the people these days. Quite a lot if they prefer to walk on their own through the ice. And this type of the crossing on the ice actually was very interesting because later it was used by the special ice trams. I will show you one of them here. So you see, this is the tram right on the ice, and this is Peter and Paul Fortress. Why they were using it and was it safe? According to the researchers, yes, it was safe. There were no accidents connected to the trams falling underwater because of the instability of the ice. It was okay. The problem was that the trams themselves, sometimes they got out of order, the conductors couldn't actually work out how they were moving. So it was a problem, but not a lot of accidents. It was quite a stable and comfortable way to move. And actually, the city had another type of transport. It was called konka. You can see it here. The horses were moving the tram cars, and even when the trams, electric ones, appeared, they still used the horses. And they had to put the real trams on the ice. Why? Because the horse trams, they had the agreement for 30 years, and they couldn't put the electric trams here because it was a different company. So they just had to leave this outdated type of transport for many, many years and to test the new type of transport, the innovation, only on the ice, which is quite a unique thing. Now let's move back to the city center. And we will walk from the Hermitage. We will go a little bit down here to the Alexander Column. Our plan is to walk like locals towards the second spot where we are going. It's the Church on the Spilled Blood. So it's this direction, and we are going to walk there by foot, like the locals do. On our way, I'm going to show you how the people are going through the yards here, because St. Petersburg has the avenue and the streets, but the buildings, it looks like they don't have any entrances between them. Only the locals know how to shorten your path, how to go through here. So we are going right here, you can see, in the little corner, marching through the Choral Academy, and appearing on the different street. And one more time, going through the passage. It's easy to get lost here, so you have to know your way around. Voila! We arrived to the different street just going through the yards, because in other case you have to go around for like around 1 or 2 kilometers, which is very time consuming. This system of the inner yard crossings is very, very famous in St. Petersburg. So some people even have the keys from the places where they don't live, just to shorten the way and to arrive somewhere faster. Oh, you see, they have still the FIFA World Cup signs here. So this was the fan zone during the 2 summers ago in 2018. Now we are arriving to our second spot. It's the Church on the Spilled Blood. Our walk will concentrate in the center, so it's not really far to cover all of the main attractions. And we have arrived. Probably this building reminds you of something that you have already seen on our previous tours. It's, of course, the St. Basil's Cathedral. And that's not the coincidence. Basically, the Spilled Blood Church took a lot of things, a lot of the details and architecture plans from the St. Basil's Cathedral. Why this was done and why this church is important. First of all, the name Spilled Blood. So it tells about the place, the exact place where Emperor Alexander II was killed. And if you go inside of the cathedral, basically there is a chapel right there, and the bricks surrounded by the fence where that happened. So you can see the blood of the emperor actually spilled there, and people come to pray there for this victim. I will show you how it looks right here. You can see this is a special chapel, and this is the original brick where his carriage stopped and where he was killed. Another thing about the spilled blood is how it was done and why it took this form. So if we look at the mosaics, see all of this is very similar to the traditional Russian churches style. So this is 1881 when he was killed, and the church was built for 24 years. So you can see that this is much further when it was more the styles of classicism, and that one is the completely different style. What happened is that the emperor who was building it, Alexander III, he said that I want this to look typically Russian. I want to go back to the past and to take all of the details from the original Russian cathedrals. these are the projects that he was proposed to do. You see, this looks too Byzantine. This is the project that he approved finally, but not the one that we see nowadays. So you see that this was done by the Archimandrite Ignati and Parland. After all, they decided to have one separate chapel where we have the exact place where the emperor died, and also the similarities to St. Basil, but not the exact copying of St. Basil. If you remember, the cathedral in Moscow has the separate chapel. So you have the 9 churches which stand in the different, they have different rooftops and different domes. Here it's a bit different. It only resembles separate chapels, but in fact it's the solid place, it's the solid area for praying. If you look back here, we will go around a bit to look at the canal near the Spilled Blood Church. There is a legend about the crosses here, because now you can see the beautiful crosses on the tops of the domes. And people who were restoring it in 2000s, they told that the crosses were gone at some point. In the USSR, this church was to be blown, and only miracles saved it, that when the people who wanted to blow it put the dynamites under it. Basically, it was close to World War II, and they just forgotten about it. They didn't finish what they wanted. Basically, the diamonds were left there without the exact destruction of the cathedral. And what happened at some point when the restoration was going on, a random stranger came and said, "You know where the crosses are?" And the people said, "No, we don't know. The reconstruction is going without the crosses." And he said, "They are in the canal. They are hidden there." And basically, they started to look, and they found the crosses, which are now on the tops of the domes. So this church has lots and lots of miracles surrounding it. Another thing, for example, is that people are gossiping that inside there is a strange icon, a miraculous icon that can predict the events. And it always shows the dates, the important dates for Russia. So last time it was 1917, then 1941, 1991, the collapse of USSR. Previous to was the revolution and the World War II. And some people are saying that, yes, it's showing the future as well. So some of the dates are telling about the important events in the future Russian history. But no one knows where this icon is, so we just keep dreaming about it. Alright, now we are going to walk around it. Yeah, you see, at the picture here, this is 2019. It's under reconstruction. Actually, all the time in the USSR, it was also under reconstruction, and people were joking then, when they will finish this reconstruction, Soviet Union will already collapse. And basically, that happened. So when they finished reconstruction, it was 1990. 1991, Soviet Union collapsed. We don't know how long this reconstruction will take. I think this year it's finishing, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah, you can see the canal here. It's actually used by boats, by the tour groups. So sometimes it's possible to have to go through entire city only on a boat. Now we are passing some of the buildings. You see, all of the structures are almost the same height in St. Petersburg. This was a special regulation by the government. They actually said that nothing should be taller than Winter Palace, because that was the royal residency. Only the churches and the chapel, the spires of the churches were a bit taller. Sorry. But in general, the height was the same. It was a rule. No one could, break this rule. It was impossible. Even for the nobility, even for the best companies, never ever. So now our plan is to go to the Nevsky, to the beautiful Nevsky Prospect, the main artery of St. Petersburg. Basically the first street that appeared in St. Petersburg. Originally it was a road, actually 2 roads. And Nevsky, it's not called because of the Neva river. No, it's called because of the Alexander Nevsky Monastery, Alexander Nevsky Lavra. Because if you look at Nevsky Prospect from the distance, it's 6 kilometers long. It's one of the longest streets in St. Petersburg and in Russia. And also it leads directly from Admiraltейство. I will show you from this beautiful view here. Yeah, so now we will look at the Nevsky right here, this biggest street of all in St. Petersburg. That's where you see the little park. It's Admiraltейство. And if we look on the other side, I will move it. That goes directly to the Alexander Nevsky Lavra. There was a legend that first it was 2 roads, as I told you. One led from Admiraltейство to the merchant point, and then another from the merchant point to the monastery. So the one that led to the monastery was actually built by the monks. And it was better. That's like a joke from the time of Peter the Great. Let's go back to Nevsky and discuss some of the important constructions here. Yeah, tell us in comments, have you been to St. Petersburg? What is your favorite building there? Oh, sorry. Yeah, we are here back. And maybe some of the buildings we haven't covered today, we can cover them later in our translations, because isolation in Russia continues and Moscow continues till 12th of May. So we still have plenty of time. We were thinking about doing the live about some of the Golden Ring towns, the oldest in Russia, like Sergiev Posad or Suzdal or Vladimir. So write us in comments what would you like to see. Now we are standing in front of this magnificent building. It's called Zinger, you can see here. And I'm going to ask you the question, do you think this company is German or American? Zinger. So write us in comments and we'll see who guessed it right. Before I'll tell you the truth, the answer, we are going to discuss the general construction, how it looks. You can see that if you compare it to the rest of the street view, it's different. First of all, it's different because it's higher, it's taller, and the second thing is basically it's more decorative, and at the same time it looks quite cleaner because of the pipes. You see, the water pipes are not present here. They are hidden inside of the columns. This was the first invention of the architect Suzor. Basically, he was among the first people in 1904 who used the metal constructions only for this building. So this entire structure allows him to use a lot of windows, to get a lot of light into the building. Just because of the metal construction, they can bear any amount of the glass. They don't need the additional supports. So what was it about? What was the company Zinger and what it produced? Basically, it was American company, and the German name came from the person who actually was born in America, but his parents were from Germany. And he was doing a lot of the patents, he was developing the technology of the sewing machines. That's how his company grew to the enormous wealth, and he built the amazing skyscraper in Manhattan, in New York. I will show you how it looked. It was 11 floors. At that time, this was considered to be a skyscraper. You will see how, yeah, exactly, it's a lot of glass. It's very similar to the modern skyscrapers that we build nowadays, but with a bit of Art Deco style. So that's New York. He wanted the same in St. Petersburg. And he showed this project to Suzor. Suzor only understood the lower part. He thought that he needs to build only something like this, maybe 4 floors or 5 floors. And then the problem was that Zinger wanted more, and Russian government didn't. So imagine, Russian government wanted him to make it, of course, lower than Winter Palace. Poor Suzor, probably he was really suffering and he doubted whether he can continue this project or not. But he came up with a very interesting idea. And you can see this idea on top. This is basically, we will look from the distance, you will understand it better. The Because this is the attic. It's not the building where people are located, where the trade is going on. It's just the attic that made the entire construction taller than the rest of the buildings in Petersburg. This was quite smart. You can see on top, this is actually the model of the Earth, the world, because the Zinger wanted to conquer the world by the very good product, the good sewing machines. You can also notice a lot of the interesting details of the building. For example, these ladies, Valkyrias, who were the guards of the merchants. They were helping the merchants to do all of their expeditions. So here they are showing us that this company will be productive and the gods will help it. It's interesting if you look closer to the Valkyrias. I will show you the picture. They have the sewing machines right here. So they're like swimming, sailing on the boats, and just near their arm there is a sewing machine, the main product of Zinger company. I wanted to show you what is inside now, because in the USSR, imagine, Zinger sounds German, and in Europe, when they only came to Europe, they tried to say that yes, our roots are in Europe, we are German, we belong here. That actually played a very bad joke with them during World War I, because Germany was not well appreciated this time, and even in Russia they had big problems. They said, we are American. They even invited an American embassy to be located in their building to help them to improve the situation, but that didn't help. They had to leave. And actually the building became just a Soviet bookstore. Now it's again the bookstore. We will walk inside and see what's there. I want to show you their cafe because they were very, very popular in the time of the Zinger, in the time of the USSR. Okay, let me check how it works. If it allows us to get inside. I remember that it's possible. Maybe I can do it another way. Let me check. No, I moved all the way far from where we were. Let's move back. Back to Nevsky, please. Alright, that's Nevsky. Here we are. We return back. Alright, I think cafe doesn't want to open to us. Alright then, let's skip that and probably go to the Kazan Cathedral. We just crossed the Nevsky. Oh, a few words about... I think it appeared. Yeah, it appeared. We are in Zinger. Yes! Bravo. The maps helped me. So now we are on the first floor. You can see it's like a souvenir and bookstore now, so really nothing special. But on the second floor, it's quite unique because it has like the original cute structure of the cafeteria, which I adore. Now we are going for the beautiful shelves. Yeah, what a view. If you are in St. Petersburg, it's a must to visit this place. Yeah, I love the decoration, I love the view. Just imagine this beautiful summer day drinking coffee here. It's wonderful. But now our plan is to visit this structure in front. It's Kazansky Cathedral. Let's go. We crossed the street and we are looking right at the square. The square now has a beautiful park, but it was not always like that. Basically, this was like the empty space for the crowds together, and that brought to lots of demonstrations and manifestations. That's why they decided to put a lot of the greenery there to prevent people from having the protests. If you look at the structure in general, it reminds you of something. And the something is Basilica in Rome, St. Peter's Basilica. I will show you the picture of how it looks if you forgotten or don't remember what I'm talking about. Here we are. Voila. Yeah, looks exactly the same. So you have these columns which are surrounding the square. the open space for people to come for the prayers. In Vatican, it serves to listen to the Pope, but here it just served as the square for the people to gather. And the same with the dome. You can see the dome is exactly identical. If we move back, yeah, you can see. Some people say that no, it's a bit different, it's more like artsy, the architect Varanichin didn't copy it exactly. So it's your decision. Write us in comments, what do you think? Do you think it's similar or do you think it's different? While we are doing this, we'll come closer and we will appear in the colonnade. You can see here a very beautiful view. Actually, in real life, you are not allowed to go here. In the past, it was open for the people. Now it's not. You see, why so many columns? Why this space? In Vatican, it's needed because people came there in the very warm weather and they came by horse, they came by carriages, they needed the shade. So in Vatican, it's reasonable because it gives people the shade, the space where they can relax and wait for the prayer. In Petersburg, though, I think it's quite useless because first, you have steps. So basically, you couldn't move your horses there and stay in your carriage drinking water. Then you don't have fountain here. In Vatican, you have, where you can take the water for your horses. And also in St. Petersburg, you don't have that much sun. It's like no sun at all, especially in winter time. So there is like no need of a shade. Basically, you want sun. That's why it's a bit ridiculous. But architect Varanichin was the man from the peasants. Actually, that's why some of the nobility were criticizing him, because they didn't believe that the peasant could build something beautiful. And it was a lot of criticism. Now we'll have a look at these beautiful doors, because they also are a copy of something. This something is, maybe you know, it's the famous baptistery of San Giovanni in Florence. I will show you the picture because it's quite important for art history. This is the first example of the Renaissance. So that's the first structure basically of the Renaissance by the famous Ghiberti. And our masters, basically they puzzled a little bit the things. If you look at the structure of the door here and compare it to the St. Petersburg door, it's different. The scenes are put in the wrong points here. So basically the master who was doing the metal work, he just messed it up a little bit. That's why it's not the exact copy, because the pictures are located differently. Now we go inside. I will give you a little tour of the interiors. This cathedral is called Kazansky. You may ask me, why? What Kazan has to do with St. Petersburg? So I will explain. Kazan, as you remember from Nikita's tour of the Red Square, if you haven't seen it yet, go to a link that we left in the description to this video and watch it. Nikita told you about the conqueror of Kazan by the Tsar Ivan the Terrible. Basically, when this conqueror happened, the city was almost completely burned. But there was a girl Matrona, her name was. She actually was dreaming, and in her dream she saw Mary. Mary told her that go to the cathedral, to the remains of the cathedral because it was ruined, and take the icon because it's there under the ashes. And Matrona went there and she really found the surviving icon that was protected. So she kept it, and basically this became the biggest relic of the Russian Orthodox Church. Now this icon again disappeared, so we don't know where it is, but we have a lot of copies from it, and copies are from Peter the Great time, from actually the different epochs when it still existed. I will show you one of them. It was the icon that the royal family was praying to. You can see people come here. It's the working cathedral. So if you're in St. Petersburg, you can come here, and actually it's open for visitors without any payment. It's free of charge. Here is the altar, and the icon is right here. You can see on the left side. It's relatively small, but it's very important as a relic. A lot of pilgrims come here. It's one of the main sites. I will show it to you closer. I have downloaded it somewhere here. Here we are. So that's the type of the Russian icons that we were describing to you on the tour to Kremlin as well. You can see here a lot of the jewels. So this is all we call aklat, the covering of the icon. The real paint is hidden behind the metal. That's the typical way to decorate the icons. One more thing important in this cathedral, it's the tomb of the General Kutuzov. He is famous for the victory over Napoleon. Maybe you know the history of the Grand Army, how it tried to conquer Russia. Kutuzov was a relatively old man. He started the war, so imagine he died when he was 67. So in his 60s, he was leading the army to the war and constantly following Napoleon, trying to force him out of Russia and then trying to conquer actually Paris and France and to free it from the Napoleon's rule. So his health didn't stand it, he died, and this cathedral is basically built just right before the Napoleon's invasion. That's why they decided to bury him here. I will show you how tomb looks closer, because there are some interesting things there. Okay, this is the tomb. You can see the ladies here looking in it, and I like this particular trophies. You can see here the Empereur Napoleon. This is the standard, so it's like the main flag of Napoleon's army. And also you have the keys. Keys are also trophy from the cities that Kutuzov managed to take from Napoleon. Amongst them are Bremen and some of the German part of Europe. So imagine how many cities he captured. Quite an interesting man, and basically he died in his glory. Imagine he managed to force Napoleon out of Russia, he started following him, and the same moment he died. Now our plan is to move out of the cathedral. I forgot to tell you one more important thing about the Zinger house. So among all of the details, there is one more important. It's on the top of the dome, on the top of the attic. You can see the bird over there. So when I ask you if it's German or American, this particular detail definitely tells you that this is American, because this is the Great American Seal. I have it in my pictures here. You can compare. This is the Great American Seal. Ta-da! Completely the same, it's just this one has arrows. Ours hasn't got any arrows. It just has the laurus branch. So it's the quite peaceful bird. Now let's walk around the Nevsky, and soon we are finishing, because we wanted this tour to be not really complicated, so just to cover a few things to have fun. And for more tours and for more information, we do them every Saturday, so you can watch our episodes like weekly. And also we do lots of educational videos here on this channel, so if you're not yet subscribed, you can do it as well. Now we are walking through the area of Gostiny Dvor. This was the main market. You see how busy is the traffic on Nevsky. There is a joke that Nevsky has much higher temperatures than the rest of the city and the suburbs. For example, in the summertime, it's like 5 or 6 degrees higher than the rest of the city. In the wintertime, it's 10 degrees higher. So imagine how busy the street is. So if you're in St. Petersburg, Nevsky is beautiful, but if you want to have rest from the crowd, don't go there, because it's always crowded. We are coming now to the second building that we really love, we really adore. It's called the Yeliseyev Emporium. Maybe you've heard about it in Moscow. And actually, yes, we have 2 of them now left, because there were 3 of them. One more was in Kiev. Here it is. We'll come, let's look at it like this. You can see also the same style as Zinger, very similar, They are the same epoch, the same dates. It's just this one is built by a different architect, Baranovsky. He was the family architect of the Yeliseyev brothers. Actually, Yeliseyev, it's a very interesting family. Their father, his name was Kasatkin. He was the gardener of the famous Graf Stroganov, the Count Stroganov. You may know him because of the dish, beef stroganoff. It's the same guy. What happened is that this gardener, he managed to bring the fresh strawberry in winter for Christmas as a present to the Stroganov man. And what happened is that Stroganov said, "It's unbelievable how you managed to do it in winter, the fresh fruits. Wish whatever you want, I will grant it to you." And this was the time when Russia had serfdom. So actually this man, Kasatkin, he was a serf. And being a smart man, he said, "Yes, Graf Stroganov, I want my freedom, if I can wish whatever I want." So Stroganov had to do this because people were watching his guests, and he gave him freedom. Also, he gave him 100 rubles, which at that time was quite a big money. And Kasatkin escaped to St. Petersburg fast before Stroganov actually took his words back. He opened a small business. He was just trading oranges in the wintertime on the Nevsky Prospect. Slightly the business developed, and his brother was also bought by him from Stroganov. Together they took the family name Yeliseyev, because Yeliseyev was their father. That was easy. That's why from Kasatkin the family became the Yeliseyev family. So his grandchildren opened these beautiful stores all around like Russia, St. Petersburg and Kiev. If you look at this building also, it has a little bit of the significance in the sculpture. Some people say that this is like a style of the merchant modern, which is not a simple modern because it's like too bright and it has lots of the huge sculptures which are not really like coming into style. But I think it's beautiful. Tell us, what do you think? And you can see here the figures. They are symbolic. This, for example, is the famous god Mercury. This is the god of trade, and he always helps the merchants, the traders. You can see the symbol, his symbol here, with the two snakes. You can find the symbol on any merchant building. The little putti also packing the goods for him. And over here is also the anchor. So this is the symbol of the water trade. Let's go inside. Well, we have some time. Basically, we will finish somewhere here. I will show you one more thing. Oh yeah, also forgot to remind you, if you want, you can leave us donations, because now, as you know, the borders are closed, the city is closed, so we cannot do what we normally do, the guided tours. That's why it's very important to know that you support us. All right, coming in, I will show you what is inside. Yeah, you can see the beautiful moving figures here. Basically, if you come in real life, it's like a show of lots and lots of the food floating around, the merchants running. So now we are inside. You can see that the space is relatively small, but it had a lot of the unique things here. For example, you see these two brothers waving to us. These are Yeliseyev brothers. And the funny thing is that when they were opening the store, the entire Yeliseyev family was singing in choir there. They also brought this icon that I've told you about, Kazansky, from the Kazansky Cathedral. And they basically blessed the entire space for the good trade. If you compare this building and the building in Moscow, I will show you the picture. This looks much smaller. Moscow building was made first, but they are both beautiful. They were for the aristocrats, for the merchants to do their shopping, the luxury shopping. Of course, the peasants were not coming here. But back to our main space. There is a legend as well about the beautiful chandelier that the Yeliseyev family made because they wanted somehow to store their gold and their diamonds. They didn't know what revolution will lead to, and they decided just to melt it all together and to put it into the chandelier. Later on, they couldn't take it back when they were in Europe. It was still in Russia, and at some point it disappeared. So no one knows where this magic chandelier is, which is quite funny as well. So many interesting stories connected to the revolution, how the wealthy people were trying to actually make all of their diamonds and gold leave the country because they were checked constantly on the border. They couldn't bring anything. That's why it's a lot of spy novels written on this topic. One more thing, the last thing I want to tell you about St. Petersburg, it's about the well yards, because the same architect, Baranovsky, who was the family architect, he was just the husband of the daughter of Yeliseyev. So basically what happened is that he built also the Hodny Dom, which is the house for rent for the Yeliseyev family. And in this Dohodny Dom, you can see how beautiful their entrance is. That's also his work. They have this. This is a very typical feature in the St. Petersburg architecture. This is called the well yard. So the windows of the flats are basically facing the rest of the apartments in the same building. Where the structure comes from, why? Is this reasonable or not? So basically, the idea was the lack of space. If we go back to our map, just to any of the panoramic views, you will see that most of the buildings in St. Petersburg, they have this structure. You see one well yard, second well yard, third. This was done because the space was in the big lack. It was very expensive to build a house like that. And all of the owners, they wanted to economize this space. So how do you put more apartments for rent into the building? They needed light, right? They needed somehow the sun to be coming in their windows. That's why this type of the yard appears, because at least a little bit of the light will be coming into these apartments. It will be just easier to locate more and more families there. And in St. Petersburg, as it was the city of lots and lots of the hired workforce, basically most of the people didn't own apartments. They were renting them, including, for example, famous poet Pushkin. He also didn't buy anything. He was just constantly renting. That's why these well yards are like a very, very unique structure, and photographers adore them, because imagine what a beautiful view you can get. Some of them, they have like a form of Batman wings. Some are like the round ones. So if you have excursion in St. Petersburg, definitely don't skip this opportunity to get into the yards, to get into the parade entrances, and to see how the local life was going on. Because the city is entirely in UNESCO. All of the buildings are old here, and that's why even like rent an Airbnb in some of these buildings will be a great experience, because you will live in the like 100 or 150 or 200-year-old building. You can see that the river is crossing here, so basically you have the canals. Some of them were gone, were destroyed, because at some point they understood that the idea of Peter the Great won't work, that canals are too hard to dig and the big boats won't come through. The people still didn't want to use them. They wanted to just move by horses. Peter actually made a very interesting thing. He gave the free boats to the nobility. He said, I give it to you for free, use it. But if you sink it, you pay the entire sum of money, which meant that they had to maintain them, because if you just, like dump it somewhere, it will sink automatically. They had to maintain. And that's how the trade started. He just forced people to use the goods that he applied them. It's like that. So I think on that we are ending our tour on our beautiful panorama of St. Petersburg. Write us which other buildings, which other cities you want us to cover, because we didn't go to St. Isaac's, for example. We didn't cover like the secret hidden gems. So definitely we are waiting for your feedback, whatever you can suggest. And we'll see you next Saturday on our new tour. Hopefully soon the borders will open and we can see you live. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, all right, bye-bye.